Warning. This podcast is about to open the sealed section of spirituality.
Hey you, yeah you, we see you, you divine human being.
And we are calling you to come home.
We are ready to talk about the real shit. We're going to get real about life as a divine human being.
The good, the not so great, spirituality and taboo. Divinely Human is the podcast that's all about what it means to be human in a spiritual context.
We know it's not just about being spiritual, it's about being human too.
And that means changing poopy nappies and channeling angels.
Sometimes even at the same time. It's time for us to stop making other people's noise our own soundtrack of life.
Let's make some waves together so that we can all ride them together and create deep resonance, a sense of home in this crazy world.
Pour yourself a coffee
Or a glass of wine if that's your potion.
and sit down with your new favorite spiritual sisters
As we go on a journey together into what it means to be
a divine human being.
on this spiritual journey.
Hi, and welcome to another episode on the Divinely Human podcast. I am Tanita, your co-host.
And I am Aleisha.
Thanks for coming back for another week. We've had some really, really awesome feedback from not our last episode, but the episode previous to that about mental health. And I just want to give a little shout out to everybody who came in to our DMs and shared about the podcast on their own platforms. It was really heartwarming to see just how this episode affected and I don't know, it touched everybody else because it was a really vulnerable episode. And I'm just grateful that we get to talk about these things and it not be stigmatized anymore.
Yeah, that was really, really beautiful. I don't think we've received so many messages after an episode before. I think that it's definitely something that everyone needed, including us. And yeah, I was thinking before that the last few episodes we've done have been such a big, deep dive. So I am looking forward to today's.
I have a spicy, oh my God, that word, spicy prediction. No, my God, it's just completely left my mind. Suspicion. Oh my God, what is wrong with me lately? Honestly.
Prediction could be a prediction.
Could be. Anyway, I think today is going to be one of those if I can get the words out.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And the reason why we wanted to deep dive into today's chosen topic is because we are both feeling this new trajectory form within each of our businesses and just in our spaces, in our communities. So we felt that this would be really, really important to speak about because you guys are going to be seeing a lot of changes individually from us, especially coming into next year. So
yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how many other businesses do this too, because as you were talking, I was receiving this businesses can also go through a spiritual awakening, which is really cool. And I think that's exactly what my business has just been going through the past couple of months, this awakening to the fact that the way that it was formed isn't the way that it always wants to be. And there is an evolution that's happening and an expansion that's happening. So something that's been coming through for both of us and that we've been really discussing privately in the DMs for quite some time is this fact and kind of just this conversation around being a reader in this space, and something that we've both really gone back and forth around is why we're actually reading for other people and questioning maybe the ethics behind not only holding space for another person, but actually reading them, reading their energy, reading their Akashic records. And to be quite honest, this is not an easy conversation because we know so many people in this space that do read for others. We are readers. I am somebody who teaches other people how to read. So we want to make sure that this conversation comes through in a really honest and authentic way, and not in a way that's like disparaging or disbarring anybody else in this space, but just what we personally received on both of our ends.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it doesn't need to be a conversation or just the energy of these changes, that they aren't directed at, like the fact that where we are in the space that we hold at the moment is disappointing us or not making us happy, but it's just we're changing. Our outlook on this space is changing, and the way that we are working and wanting to connect is changing. And I think society itself is really changing. I think that we're getting I think, you know what, like spirituality itself, I think is going through its own awakening right now, where everything is shifting. And I keep seeing you and I have commented on the fact that there's some really old school shit happening when it comes to reading in this space. And, we have been looked at for thousands and thousands of years as like fortune tellers and mystics. And it's like, well, no, we're just people who read energy. And to be honest, it has nothing to do with telling someone's future, or like that is like 0.5% of the multitude of what, this is and what offerings, we hold for people. Yeah. So yeah, this is going to be a big one.
It is going to be a big one. And I think it's a really cool conversation coming off what we were talking about last week in terms of what we value as a society and as a generation has kind of shifted. And I think that's really playing into this as well, because old age and traditional spirituality taught you to go seek out a teacher, priest, priestess, seek somebody out to tell you the answers of your own life. And as we're shifting as a society, as a collective, into a more awakened perspective, we're seeing that we never actually had to travel outside of ourselves to get the direction that we seek. And we've noticed that as both of us have really deepened into our own mission in our businesses, we keep attracting people who want that direction, want that clarity, and want answers from us when we know they know the answer, right? So they're just seeking validation, confirmation, because they can't believe in themselves. And I'm speaking from experience. I've had clients literally tell me this, so I'm not just making shit up, that they are wanting somebody else to tell them what to do. And I think for me personally, I'm at a space where I really value sovereignty, and I really value wanting to invite others into their own truth and into their own ability to direct and bring to life anything that they want to. So it's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. But I'm curious, how has this kind of come through for you? Because I know it's a little bit the same and it's a little bit different.
Yeah. I felt like this niggle probably for, oh my goodness, for like 18 months.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've just kind of been like flogging a dead horse up a hill. I've just been ignoring myself and ignoring the insight and the guidance coming through, like from my higher self, from my team, from about restructuring and, the way that I'm holding space. And I've really been torn between what the people want and what I want to offer. So I guess in a way I felt really under pressure to continue to do my traditional readings, Akashic Record readings, psychic and tarot readings, because it's just what the people want, right? And I'm like, okay, well, this is a business, but it is my passion, but also it is also, my means of an income. So I'm just going to do what the people want.
Yeah.
And while I say that, like, yes, I was still working and am working with a lot of integrity. I still felt and feel right now like a little bit of a, because I feel like coming into this new age that we have entered, the age of Aquarius, it isn't about going to someone else for help. Okay, we're here to save ourselves. And we're also here to remember that we are here to, like, in saving ourselves and remembering who we are and our own innate power, we also save each other as well in that way. But it's not necessarily like I'm coming in to scoop you up and guide you. It's everyone becomes empowered together. Everyone rises up together. And that is the message that has been circulating in my head for a really long time. And I feel like, you know what? Gone are the days of going to a psychic or a reader for your answers. And we're heralding in this time of teaching people and gifting them the knowledge to actually do that for themselves. And spirituality and kind of like communication and connection to anything outside ourselves and to ourselves to some extent is not something that is limited and what's the right word? I'm trying to find the right word. Like, it's like right on the end.
Oh, I hate that.
Like exclusive. It's not exclusive. And I feel like right now I just want to like fuck the system and be like, everyone gets to learn this because it's your human right. I don't want people to have to, booking readings with me over, like, I know people, I've known some people in my community now for like over 5 or so years, and I've done multiple readings for them. And I'm like, I want to instill you with this so that you can still guide yourself, because I'm finding one big theme within the community. I want to say lately, but I feel like it's just been all the time. Maybe I've just been a little bit more aware of it lately, is desperation. There is so much desperation with people booking in at the moment, and I'm finding it a little bit icky. And that is, I say this with love, but that is just feeling like you're bearing the weight of someone else's future. And that's not my shit to carry. Like, you shouldn't depend on me to make your decisions. Like, even the other day, for example, like a beautiful, beautiful soul had contacted me and they were like, oh, I've got to make a massive decision. Like, do you think that, my reading will come through in time for that? And I just wrote back and I said, look, if you're relying on me to make the decision for you, it's never going to be aligned.
Yeah.
It's going to be the wrong decision.
Yeah.
Because it's not coming from you. And that is kind of in a nutshell how I'm feeling at the moment with this space. So long-winded answer there, but that's where I'm at.
No, but so needed. I'm feeling very similar to you. I think that right now there's a massive call to find that connection for yourself and reevaluate why we are getting readings and why we are standing in front of mirrors. Because truly, as a reader, you are acting as a mirror for somebody, but that mirror is still external to you. Like, while yes, it is reflective of you, there is still a lot of energy, effort, attention that needs to go towards seeking out that mirror to reflect something within you that you probably already knew. And I just think that this is a hard conversation because, one, I really understand the feeling of like getting validation for where you are and really questioning yourself, especially if you're somebody who's gone through trauma or you have a mental health issue. Sometimes it's really, really hard to be able to trust your own thought processing and your own energy. But at the same time, that is part of the healing that we need to go through in order to trust ourselves and connect with ourselves deeper. And continuing to just seek out answers outside of yourself isn't always the best option to do that. Like, we can really try and have support all around us in a way that doesn't take us outside of ourselves. And I think that's really what I'm wanting to step into more. 1, as a teacher, 2, as a reader, and 3, as an individual myself.
Yeah. Yep. That's how I'm feeling. And as well, that theme, it's funny because that theme keeps on reoccurring. And I know that we keep bringing this up every single fucking episode, being in your body and leading from your body. And as we mentioned before, like, it's like your guidance comes from you first and foremost. So even though someone might be reading your energy, there still needs to be discernment that comes with that. And, the person that's reading for you as well, like, it's a very big thing to carry, because you don't know what that person's going to then do with that information. They could go and listen to your reading and then go, like, break up with their partner and get a divorce and take the kids and, like, who knows? And I think there are a lot of people who are in that mindset of fear. And when you're coming from a place of fear and you're operating in a place of fear, it is not the best space to be in to reach out for a reading or for advice or guidance. I think that is a period of time where you need to surrender and just be still and integrate what's actually happening, not reach out to a reader. Which is funny because, like, everyone else, and I've seen other people in the industry say, like, oh, you're going through a hard time, like, I'm here, like, booking for a reading. And I'm like, well, it's probably not the best. And I've caught myself out, like, thinking like that too. But thinking about it now, I'm like, it's actually not the best space to be in to receive, because you're not supposed to receive in a time of fear. It's like you need to pull yourself up and feel that inner empowerment and know that, everything's going to be okay.
It's like hard resilience that we need to build within ourselves. And
it is hard.
It is. It's really hard. And this doesn't take away from, like, getting support and getting help from people in the community and space holders while you're going through it. It's just maybe bringing you guys the awareness that, like, why you're getting readings and who you're getting readings from. Because I know both of us have gotten a reading that was totally out of alignment and it completely fucked with us for months, if not years. And like, we can still remember things like that. And we did it. I know I did it because everybody else was booking through this particular person. And I was like, well, I just feel like it's something that I need to do, but it wasn't authentically coming from my own desires. My body was just like following my mind. It wasn't necessarily leading. And so when we're in this desperate energy, a lot of the time it is our mind leading our body, not the other way around. Our body is usually shut down and like, girl, I need a break. I need to just work through this. And it's really hard. It's really, really hard to listen to that because, like, I just went through this a couple of weeks ago where it's going through a lot of mental health stuff. And I was like, I need a reading. I even messaged you. I was like, do you know any readers? And I was like desperate. And I felt as soon as I put that request out to say, do you know a reader who can help me? Instantly, I was telling myself, you don't know how to read your own energy. You don't know the right answer. You need to go outside of yourself. And it was a really big lesson for me because I needed to be reminded of maybe why people are seeking readings from other people in that energy state. And it was hard. It was really fucking hard. But the only thing that helped me through that was taking some time, actually processing what was going on, and just being okay with the fact that, like, I'm not okay at the moment, but I can get through this. And after that, I made the decision to close my readings down, to take a break. And as the universe would have it, I have 2 family members in the ICU. My brother broke his hand. My dad's in surgery. Like, you have to trust the process. If I saw outside of myself for reading, God knows what they would have told me to do, which not putting any responsibility on anybody else, but I know that would have been added weight to my mind and to my body. It would have been a lot more for me to process. I would have continued doing readings because I felt like, well, I'm seeking readings. I should be doing readings. Like, if this is how I'm seeking help, maybe this is how I should be offering help. And I know I would have been so fucking overwhelmed with what's going on in my life right now, because I'm overwhelmed as it is, like, let alone holding space for somebody else. So all of that to say, like, I know how hard it is, but you truly have to trust, and trust is a choice.
Trust is a choice. I love that. That's an Oprah moment.
Yes.
It's an Oprah moment. I love that. And it's so true. That hit me. And I think that in itself, that story is probably the reason why we are slowly moving away from the reader and embodying more of the teacher and the enabler, archetype, because I think the more people that learn how to read their own energy before, and I'm like, there's nothing wrong with, like, I just want to reinforce, there's nothing wrong. Like, I am so grateful and I'm blessed to be able to offer this to people. But at the same time, I really feel like no one really gives themselves a chance to read their own energy before they reach out. And I think that's where the problem lies. I think that if everyone took 2 minutes before they reached out and just thought, what am I projecting right now? What am I really feeling right now? What's going on inside of me right now? Before they reached out to a reader, I think it would be a healthier situation, because a lot of the time you can tell when people don't do that. And then when they do contact you, you're hit with information overload because they have all this built up energy because they haven't actually checked in with themselves first before they've contacted you. And then next minute you're sitting there reading like an 8-paragraph email on what is happening in their life when they haven't actually paid you to read a novel about their life. I say this with love, but they haven't paid us to read an 8-paragraph, novel about like every little detail that's happening in their life. It's like, I don't need that to actually read your energy. I don't need to know your personal business. That's not mine to carry. And I think that also, that little aspect of it is a big reason why we're both feeling really exhausted from being the reader, because a lot of the time we are projected onto, and I know that it doesn't come from a place of like, malice or, like negativity, but it's just what happens when people don't check in with themselves and they reach out and they think they have a clear line of like access to you. And then all of a sudden you're swimming and sinking in every piece of information about their personal life. And like, you're like slowly sinking in their shit that they have happening in their life. And you're like, oh my goodness, I have my own stuff. Like, I didn't need to know about, your relationships and personal life and, people that like, you just don't need to know that stuff. But I think the line of access to us is really taken for granted. And I think like you give an inch and people take a mile when it comes to offloading in this space. So I think that that's actually, it cultivates a bit of resentment in being open to people and being accessible, because I know at the moment we're both just don't want to be accessible. We're like, let's just jet off to a new planet and just get off social media right now. And I know that you were saying that, you just don't even really want to be on social media because you don't want to be this accessible. And it's just one of the downsides and the downfalls of being a reader and offering that without educating. I think there needs to be a lot of education around this. And it seems really stupid just from the outside, like, oh my God, why do you need to teach about like readings? And I'm like, well, there's so many little things that people need to know because they're not going to be getting anything from a reading if they don't know, like, even the integrity surrounding it and like their boundaries.
Yeah, exactly. And I want to go back to like the offloading because I think that is really the moment of self-reflection for that person. So while they feel like they're giving us information to read, what they're actually doing is going through a moment of self-reflecting and self-connecting, but they feel that sometimes they need another person to see them do that. And I want to remind you all that you can do this for yourself. You don't have to send an email or send a text or send a DM. You can literally grab your journal out and do it to yourself. See yourself, like provide that own space for yourself, because I always think about the feedback that you're telling yourself subconsciously. When you do that, when you don't hold space for yourself to be honest and true, and you need somebody else there to be like, hey, look what I'm going through. Isn't it bad? Like you're telling yourself that one, you get attention when you're going through really traumatic, bad things. And two, you're telling yourself that you're not stable enough to hold all of this, all of your truth. And while I am not saying, and I want to make this very clear, I am not saying don't talk about the shit that you're going through, because I am a massive advocate of being truthful about your experience. But what I'm saying is if your first initial action is to do that with somebody else because you can't do it for yourself, maybe there's a little reflection that needs to happen there. And this is a lesson that I've gone through too. And it's a hard lesson to learn, but you're right. Like it's a lot for somebody to completely understand everything that's going on in your life while they too are a human. We're going through our own stuff at the moment. And on top of that, then we feel this pressure I feel this pressure to make the connection and provide as much useful information as possible. And a lot of the time then I go over and above because I feel the weight of how desperately this person needs help and support. And the other thing with that is there are so many other offerings and containers that you can be so supported and held and seen, not just by us, but by multiple people. And I think this is really why we started both of our memberships, because we want that community connection. We genuinely want to help and support you, but we cannot do everything possible in a 30-minute reading that's distance. Like that's just not the space we can do that in. And I know that for me, I'm definitely going to be creating offers for people who need that deep support, because I just can't give you everything that I am able to via a distant reading. And like I think that's just the shift that's going to be taking place in my business.
Yeah. And I want to add to as well, there's a really big difference between maybe like charging for a reading and then charging for a session where people are really unpacking what is going on in their life. Like just even the price point from a business point of view for those two things would be so different, because there is so much energy involved and problem solving and unpacking and like even, like using like your NLP and all of those sort of like life coaching and personal coaching modalities as well that go into it that we don't actually put to use during like a reading per se. That's not to discount readings. Like they're still like very much valuable, but even if we did open up a space where people could, just unpack everything, it definitely would be a different price point to what you would be paying for in just a one-to-one distant reading. So that also comes into it. And I think too, when people are kind of like oversharing, I guess, without asking permission to do so necessarily, you can kind of feel a little bit bombarded and just down that, you aren't really being paid for your time. Sometimes it takes me like half an hour to get through some of the emails that I get sent. And I'm like, that's time I could be spending with my kids. And like, as much as I love the connection, like you said, like the connection in the community is really important to us. Our time and the exchange is also really important in running a business. And, you don't book in with a psychologist and, not pay for their time. You can't just offload on the phone to them when you're booking in your appointment. There's no direct line there. It's like you book your appointment and then you chat.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big reminder to everyone in this community as well, that like our time is really, really valuable. And a lot of the stuff, sometimes when it might not feel heavy to you, it can be very heavy and impactful in reading through that and just allowing yourself to immerse in someone else's energy that has been projected. And there's definitely a time and a place for that. And I find too, I'm interested to know if you agree, but I find that if someone does kind of offload, and they have booked in a reading and they've, given me it's just a bit of an overshare beforehand. I find that it actually hinders the reading because it kind of like muddies that line of connection. And then all of a sudden the reading's just focused on their shit instead of like what was actually meant to come through for them, because they've kind of disturbed that line of connection and what the universe and their guides really had planned for them. So I find sometimes it's just best to just wait and see what wants to come through and maybe share afterwards. I don't know. It's interesting.
Plus, I'm like, this might actually come as a bit of a shock, but I'm still a skeptic, So when I book with another person, I actually want to give them as limited information because I want to see what comes through for them, even when they're not influenced by everything that I'm talking to them about. And yeah, like I feel that when I now read for somebody, when I began reading, I wanted to know as much about the person because I wasn't confident in my own abilities. Now, over time, I actually want less and less and less information because I connect with so many people's energy. I actually just want to hone in and focus on their energy, and I don't want anything else coming into that might push the connection in a particular way or make specific things come through. Exactly like you said, you want there to be a really pure, pristine, just connection that's not influenced or hindered or motivated by anything. And so if you're somebody who feels like you need to overshare, like maybe this needs to become a little bit of a game where you're like, let's just see what comes through. Like, let's play a game and see how this reader connects with my energy and like just make it a different experience for yourself. Because truthfully, as a collective, there is so much shit going on. It's literally insane. I think we need to bring the joy back to the readings,
Yeah, I agree. And that's one of the reasons why, when I first started reading the Akashic Records, I would offer people to ask like 4 or 5 questions.
Yeah.
And I found that like even with them having like the ability to ask 4 or 5 questions, I was like, they're literally pushing the reading in the direction, not from their higher self, but from their like fear side of their brain, because they're like, I want to know this. I need to know this. Oh my God, I need this information. It's coming from a place of desperation. And I found like sometimes I would sit there in their records and be like, I'm getting nothing.
Yeah, crickets.
And so now I actually cut them right back and I'm like, you can ask 1 question.
Ooh.
And we leave it open. I leave it completely open now because I'm like, you don't even know what's what's best for you when you're coming from a place of desperation. So you best believe we'll be sitting in there and allowing your higher self to come through and provide for you. I don't want to know what's happening in your life because the records know what you need. So that's one big thing that I've shifted, and I feel a little bit lighter in that whole practice and offering that now, because I find like too much flexibility in that space sometimes isn't a good thing. I think that we don't need all that information. Sometimes we don't need to ask like particular questions to get what we need. That's a big thing that I've learned over the last year or so. But yeah, it does. I don't like when people give me too much information, because I'm the same. I'm like, I don't want to know it. Just let me have a chance. Let me have a chance to bring this through by myself. Like, and sometimes you won't bring through all of their issues, but you bring through kind of like the answers to the path forward for them without even having to tap into the lower vibrational stuff that they have going on, which is a really beautiful way to provide support, but without dragging people down even further. So yeah, it's a big one, but I'm really looking forward to shifting the way that I'm showing up next year. Definitely cutting back on being the reader and stepping into being the teacher, stepping into providing more education around things instead of just allowing people to come to me and receive and leave. I think receive and leave is just not empowering anyone anymore.
It's like beauty call for readers, you know?
Yeah, like I hate you. I'm not your psychic bitch. Okay.
I feel like putting that on my website, honestly. Like I've not had a one night stand in a long, long time, but that's how it feels like when people come to you. Like, I'm not a one night stand reader. Yes. I want to be like in with you, you know?
I know. I want to have a relationship with you.
Like, I want to go past the first date.
I agree, because when you're in someone's energy, you can learn so much off them over a longer period of time. So it's like less reading, more unraveling and remembering, and
I love
empowerment.
That.
So that's where we're going. Yeah. That's where that ship is heading.
I'm curious to see, like, your then now knowing all of this, your perspective on like why we should get readings. Because for me, mine's more like what I want to provide in the reading space is more like information in terms of past life information. Like I love doing my Akashic codes where I look at your astrology and I kind of understand what your relationship to the Akashic records is. Things like that I'm really like finding that I'm attracted to. What are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm quite like the offerings that I've like the newer offerings of mine that I've been putting out have kind of been similar, like not so much like life guidance, but more or less like finding out more information on, yourself and your connections so that you can actually utilize that in your practices. So like my ancient earth lineage readings, like learning about past lives and where your lineage like lies on your chart, and then using the records to confirm that and bring through channeled messages from those past lives and people within those lives for you, that sort of stuff as well, which is quite similar in a way, because I think that is kind of a pathway of gifting tools to people rather than just gifting like advice. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like adding things to people's tool belts to use for themselves rather than being like, you should do this. Which is, I think, where like the future of this space is heading, like for everybody, really. I think everybody is going to be having to head down that road, because people are going to eventually feel like they want more, and they want to learn for themselves. But also, to kind of like directly answer that question, I feel like the reason why I would reach out and get a reading would be after self-evaluating and holding space for myself, sitting down, maybe doing a meditation, maybe doing some automatic writing and journaling, and just really trying to become clear with my energy. And I think we spoke about this the other day. You said, like, it's really interesting to see how other people read energy, because they always pick up something that maybe you can't see from where you're standing.
Yeah.
And it takes someone to maybe stand from this angle to see maybe like the light hits a little bit differently, you know? That is why I would reach out for a reading, you know, not for guidance, like not for direct guidance or directions, but more or less to see yourself in a different light after reflecting already, and just like more of like gathering more information after you're already doing the work. Does that make sense?
Yeah, total sense. Total sense. That's exactly how I feel too. It's more of a reflection rather than a path forward. And I think that's why we need to get clear on that mirror archetype as readers, because as a mirror, you're not telling people where to go, and you're not telling them where they think they should go. Like, that's not a part of the mirror archetype. All you're doing is sitting there and reflecting the light back to them from different angles. And it's not about action. That's a completely different role that we play as a coach, as a mentor, as a teacher. So yeah, I think I'm exactly the same. It's more about showing them information from themselves, from maybe a perspective that they haven't tuned into yet or can't fully grasp. And I would do the exact same thing if I was going and seeking out a reading. I'd want somebody to either read my energy or tune into, you know, my Akashic records to give me information or a perspective that I haven't fully tapped into just yet, but I know is there, you know?
Yeah. Absolutely. I agree entirely with that. I think that that is where we're heading, pretty much.
It is. I'm excited to see you step into this teacher archetype, because I know you've got it in you. So I'm excited.
I know. It's like a broken record too when I hear that, because I think that the community has kind of expected it from me a lot earlier, like years ago, but I've just felt overwhelmed, especially like when my business as well started picking up. I had just moved to a completely new town. Like, I literally moved from like a really quiet area into the middle of Sydney. So it's like, I felt like my life has been a little bit overwhelming. And even though the community saw me like maybe doing this a really long time ago, and I guess I saw myself doing this a really long time ago, like being more of a teacher than a reader, I just haven't felt like I could show up and for what I'm planning on exchanging for it. I want to make sure that I'm operating from a place of integrity and holding space for the fullest of my capacity, you know. So I was like, you know what? I'm not going to push myself, not going to rush it, because I find I get really frustrated because I've caught myself before, like offering something, and then I'm like, oh yeah, like harping on about it for a few weeks, and then I'm like, oh, and then no one hears about it. It's like, what happened to that offering of hers, you know? And I find that I've caught myself in that cycle before, and I just don't want to build that rapport with people. So I'm like, if I'm going to offer something, you best believe I'm going to be standing by that offering, because I'm that fucking passionate about this offering that it's here, and like, this is what I'm not going to abandon that. So I'm just like, I'm going to put the pressure on. I'm just going to let it do its thing. So but I am excited. I think both of us are really going to, it's going to be like 2.0 next year.
Yes, I feel
like
it.
the hybrid version.
Yes, I totally feel that. And I think we're both going to be taking a little bit of a break at the end of the year. And I think that's when a lot is going to come through for us. So I'm excited to hold space for each other too during that process. Like, we've really committed to holding space for each other and just, like having somebody else in the business space that knows kind of what you're working on and to keep you accountable. I'm excited to build that with you and see how that flourishes too, because I'm so done with the lonely business journey.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel you. I feel you. We need people. We need people in the community, and we need like a sisterhood around us to be able to reflect and share with, because we're not made to be lone wolves. We're made to like be in the communities. That's how we're biologically, made up as human beings. So it's really important. And I'm really excited to step into that with more people and hold space for people to do that. I know that, we've spoken about building more of a community around this, like advice and holding space for each other as business owners. And I know that that's definitely going to be something that we will be stepping into, if not next year or maybe sooner, whenever that wants to come through, it will come through. But I'm excited for this space as a community because it's changing before our eyes. It really is. This whole spiritual community is really taking a huge leap forward and kind of dropping the weight of the old ways and that weren't necessarily empowering people, and stepping into a more aligned, empowered, like everyone is gifted, and that's what everyone's going to be remembering going forward, I think.
Yes, totally.
What a great chat. I feel like today was great.
I feel like today was great too. I'm like, can we release this today?
I know. I know. Thank you guys. Thank you for just being a fly on the wall for this conversation, because it's really needed. And again, just to reiterate, like everything that came through today, it really comes from a place of love.
Yeah.
And I think that I just wanted to reaffirm that too, because I know that some things may seem a little bit like, wow, she really said that.
Yes.
But it does. It comes from a place of love, and we just want the best for everyone here. Yeah. And we want to see people just doing it.
Oh yeah, we do, truly. And if not anything, we made a promise to ourselves and to this community that we were always going to be honest, no matter how that sounds. And it will always come from a place of love. But truthfully, this conversation needs to happen. And I'm glad it did.
As always, thank you everybody for tuning in. We really appreciate all the feedback we're getting as well. It means the world. We would absolutely love if you had a spare minute, if you could rate us on Spotify, because that really, really, really helps push our podcast out there more as well. So yeah, you can tune into us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, and YouTube. And we will be speaking to you next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye.